let's look at the opportunities, where and why. Firstly, I'm going to take you as far away from Sydney as possible. Okay, and what you'll draw from the examples I give to you is consistency in research. Why am I in Broome? I've gone to Broome because it's a distribution hub. Okay, it's the largest town in the Kimberleys, so everything in the Kimberleys flows through Broome. Whether it's the port or the airport, it all comes through that area. I liken that to, on a smaller scale, you've got Newcastle or Townsville. Okay, so regional centres which become larger and larger through distribution. The population is growing faster than the state average in Broome. Okay, so that's important because WA's population growth has been significant, particularly after the resource boom, but we're actually seeing more growth in population in Broome. Most importantly, we've got a constraint on the supply of land. So we've got burgeoning population with a constraint on land due to native title. The Yawarru people, the indigenous of the area, control the land. They've released a small portion of land to Landcorp in WA, who are building on it and developing it, but they can't keep up with the current demand of the area. I'm coming into a market after it's dipped. Okay, I'm not hitting a Gladstone that's done 30% in the last 4 years. I'm actually hitting a market that's dropped 20% since 2008. So we're getting in at the right time. Whilst the capital values might have come off, the yields haven't. It's rare that I can find an area that will generate $600 a week for a $445,000 outlay. In Sydney, for $445, I'll probably get $510 to $530. I'm not going to get $600 a week. And that purely illustrates the demand for rentals in this area. I then look at a trigger event. I look for upside, and the upside in this instance is the Broome Basin LNG field. It's the second largest gas discovery in Australian waters. This region covers twice the size of Tasmania. There's two components to the mining of this. One is a company called Inpex that are completing a pipeline that's 900 kilometres long, and then they're doing a condensation unit onshore. The Darwin market has lifted circa 30 to 40% in the last 3 years due to the itinerant workers on this project. They'll be gone in 24 months. The Darwin market will come off. Rents will drop. The bulk of this gas field is controlled by Woodside. They haven't started the process. They were going initially to build an onshore processing facility. It's too expensive. They've got technology that allows them to do offshore rigs, so that's what they're going to do. However, we know there'll be service out of Broome because there's nowhere else up or down the coast that can deal with it. Throughout the construction phase of this project, you've got to expect we'll see significant growth. If we only get back to the market where it was in 2007, our clients will be up by circa $100,000. But keep in mind, the market right now has no gas, has no mining. It's not a mining-dominated area, and we're seeing some of the highest yields around the country. Types of assets extend from 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom to 3-bedroom houses to good quality finishes right throughout. The numbers. Starting numbers, $375,000 a year. Sorry, $375,000 purchase price will rent for $590 a week. Okay, that $590 is determined by taking the market rent, discounting it by 20%, and adding the $200 a week from the government. So roughly $590 a week would be our income, which means if you bought that asset, we're making $170 a week positive cash flow. That's on an income of $80,000. If you're on a higher tax bracket, you're well over $200 a week positive cash flow. Occasionally, we get what's called dual NRAS incentives. That's a situation where we've got one asset, but we've actually got two NRAS incentives attached. In this case, it would be a dual key house. So essentially a 4-bedroom house, but it's been split. One bedroom has been carved off almost as a granny flat. So that granny flat will rent for $400 a week. The 3-bedroom house will rent for $700 a week. But we get an NRAS incentive on the house and one on the granny flat. Because of that, we're receiving over $500 a week after tax. So again, if we can buy one asset which is going to generate us in excess of $25,000 a year after tax, indexed for the next 10 years, in an area which is forecast to grow because of infrastructure change, we've got to have a look at it and have a very good close look at it. Second opportunity I'll take you to, Sunshine Coast. Going north, going an hour north of Brisbane. Again, we've got a market that's dropped circa 20%. When the GFC led to the consolidation of weekenders, that meant people were just selling their holiday units cheaper. What is most important over there is the change in infrastructure, what is being constructed now and over the next 3 to 4 years. Firstly, the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. It's underway now and forecast to create 10,000 permanent jobs. The Stockland's New Town Centre. That's starting this year, another 10,000 permanent jobs. The Maroochydore Principal Activity Centre. Starting early next year, 8,000 permanent jobs. The airport being expanded, another 5,000 permanent jobs. Not to mention the construction workforce that'll be in this area whilst this is all being constructed. If we can get into these regions before this infrastructure is being completed, we're going to make money. We've done it time and time again using this simple methodology. When I look at the Sunshine Coast, we're kind of looking at areas from Caloundra through Kawana Waters, Mooloolaba and Maroochydore. The yellow you see on your screen, these are all the infrastructure projects that we're developing, well, not we're developing, that companies are working through as we speak. Kawana Waters is where we've identified an opportunity for our clients. It is the closest asset to all of these new infrastructure projects. The Ramsay Private Hospital has just opened. The project we're talking to, Broadwater, is over here, and needless to say, our tenants are coming straight out of the hospital to fill the NRAS incentives. This project is completed about 3 or 4 weeks ago. There are still a dozen to 15 in this project. They're well appointed apartments. We're starting at $325,000. That'll rent for $455 a week, which means if you acquired this asset based on a 100% leverage situation, we're generating, again, near $160 per week positive cash flow. Moving to Brisbane, I guess a more conventional asset for some, the Brisbane Market dipped 20% in the last couple of years. There was an oversupply of product in Brisbane, and there were an awful lot of itinerant workers in Brisbane doing, whether it was the desalination plant or the tunnel network. When these people left, we saw the market take a hit. One of the concerns we've always had for Brisbane goes about the supply, or looking for a constraint on supply of the asset. Brisbane sprawls north, it sprawls south, and it sprawls west. They consider Ipswich part of Brisbane these days. There is no gap between the Gold Coast and Brisbane anymore. It's just all developed. We're now looking north, and it's sprawling up through Caboolture these days, which is, we're talking 40, 50 kilometres north. If there's no constraint, they just keep building and building and building, and there's no reason why that value is going to increase. Hence, we've gone east. On the eastern side of the city is where we're looking at a natural constraint on supply being Moreton Bay. We've got to knock things down to build new ones, which ultimately lead to a higher price in the asset. First location I'll take you to is Capalaba. Capalaba, look, it sits about a 20-minute drive from the CBD, 10 minutes to the coast. It's got all the infrastructure around it, but the change in infrastructure through the freeways has allowed it to blossom. The Port of Brisbane up the top here, and also the airport, are massive employment centres growing out of sight. If you've flown into Brisbane recently, you'll see reclaiming the land up around the Port of Brisbane to expand it. So they're sand dredging Moreton Bay to make it larger and larger. So we're talking 40-odd thousand new employees will be in these regions in the next 10 years. So that becomes a surge on areas close by. This is a small townhouse development. It'll be finished early next year. 3-bedroom properties, circa $400,000, renting for $552 a week. What that means is we've got positive cash flow of about $130 each and every week moving forward for a decade. Another suburb of Brisbane is Nundah. Nundah again, we're only just northeast of Brisbane. Importantly, we've picked this area because it's going through gentrification. It's been one of these areas which has been positively impacted upon by the tunnels and the link roads. So we're also, you can't see it here, but we've got some of the biggest shopping centres in Brisbane minutes away from this project. These are apartments under construction now. They'll be finished back end of next year. Nice projects, starting at $335,000, renting $496 a week. So again, we're talking positive cash flow of about $130 a week if you bought this on a fully leveraged position. Sydney, the amount of inquiry we get over the Sydney market, look, it's head and shoulders above everything else. Ironically, Sydney isn't necessarily the best cash flow performer even under NRAS, but people still believe in it as a market. So we're constantly trying to source more and more properties in Sydney, and as they do come into hand, they tend to shift very swiftly. Our next opportunity will be in Jordan Springs. Jordan Springs is on the outskirts of Sydney. Okay, so it's out just north of Penrith. We're about 7 kilometres from Penrith. Using this map, what it's showing is the infrastructure. It's showing us the M2, the M4, the M5 down here, and obviously the linking road being the M7. The infrastructure change has been orchestrated by the state government to grow the southwest of Sydney, the northwest of Sydney, and importantly, this designated Western Sydney employment corridor. So the reason we're heading out west is this is at our fingertips. People are moving out to these locations because the jobs are there and because there is an opportunity to get a nice dwelling. Clients say, oh look, I want to buy at Alexandria in the CBD. I'm like, why? Why spend $700,000 plus for a 2-bedder here when you can head out here and get a better, bigger asset for half that price? Not to mention the supply of dwellings in some of these areas in the eastern suburbs. When you hear that Meriton are building 2,000 apartments around that Alexandra, Mascot, Pagewood area, that's an oversupply for me. We want to make sure we avoid that risk. The suburb of Jordan Springs is part of a master planned community being developed by Delphin Land Lease. It's a 900-hectare site. You may be familiar with Ropes Crossing. Ropes Crossing is already under construction. New schools have gone in, new shopping centres have gone in, and the prices have risen. Jordan Springs is a younger development, but we're seeing the price going up. My contacts are telling me that the price of land alone in Jordan Springs is likely to increase by $40,000 a block in the next release. Eventually, these estates will be linked, but there'll be stunning parkland in between. It's an area which will be sought after due to people having that desire to live in a more affluent area. Of the current master plan of Jordan Springs released, we're focused on these properties opposite the shopping centre and opposite the parkland and the lake. So really attractive assets. Not a massive project, and importantly, not all of these properties have an NRAS entitlement, so a large number of these are going to owner-occupiers. The developer has built many projects around Sydney, and what he does is produce a larger asset. So we're talking circa 100 square metre, 2-bedroom apartments here. Our prices are starting at early fours, but our income is $528 a week. After all said and done, all our costs are considered, we're generating cash flow of about $166 each week.